At the opening of the tale, there stood a mighty nation famed for its overwhelming military strength. The Descent Kingdom, governed by King Farid III. By placing supreme value on magic and fostering countless talented sorcerers, the kingdom had subdued many surrounding lands. At the heart of this terrifying power were 7 court sorcerers, figures whose exceptional abilities had been personally acknowledged by the king himself. They were called the 7 Masters, and their renown had spread not only throughout the kingdom but far beyond its borders. On the eastern edge of the realm, within imperial lands known as Box, the 35th Frontier Battalion was stationed at the Teutoburg Great Forest frontline camp. There, a young man carefully inspected several magic stones, noting that, as expected from a Tempest Ogre, even a single Fong held enormous magical energy. He commented that once a magic stone was embedded, the effect would grow even stronger. At that moment, a girl approached from behind and informed him that the Magic Tool Squad wished for the captain to inspect the items they had produced. He replied that he would go right away. When he arrived and laid eyes on the materials, excitement clearly crossed his face. His name was Arnold von Eckenstein. He had been assigned to Box, near the monster-infested Teutoburg Forest, and had served in Homeland Defense there for almost 5 years. Walking up to the team, he asked about their progress. One soldier reported that the healing potions used in the previous battle had been successfully replenished and requested his assessment. Arnold replied that their quality was both high and consistent, and that it was obvious everyone's skills were steadily improving. The man answered modestly, saying there had still been many failures along the way. Arnold explained that potion-making demanded experience and accuracy, then suggested he demonstrate the process himself. The entire group reacted in shock upon hearing that the captain would personally show them. As Arnold activated his magic, one soldier remarked that the purity of his magic was on a completely different level, adding that there was probably no mage in all of Descent who could rival him when it came to creating magical tools. Suddenly, another girl rushed in with news that members of the patrol squad had been injured. They hurried to the scene, where an injured girl apologized, admitting she had lowered her guard after assuming the enemy was only a goblin. Arnold told her to leave the treatment to him, and as he worked his magic, he remarked that the monsters of Box were on a completely different level from those in other regions. Even a single goblin would retaliate viciously if underestimated. The girl replied that if only she had been stronger, the outcome might have been different. She had lost her family and, as a second-class citizen, had nowhere left to return to. That was why, even if it cost her life, she wanted to be useful to Captain Arnold and the others. Nearly every member of the 35th Frontier Battalion came from nations that had been conquered and absorbed by the Descent Kingdom. Given their second-class status, many had been drafted into military service, and Arnold reflected that perhaps it was the same for all of them, with no home left to return to. That was precisely why he had sworn never to lose a single member of his unit. They did not fight for the kingdom alone. The 35th Frontier Battalion fought together. On the brutal battlefield of Box, the title of one of the 7 Masters held no meaning whatsoever. Arnold had understood that harsh reality the moment he was assigned here. Every day, they drove back powerful monsters, losing comrades along the way, while everyone silently wondered if tomorrow would be their turn to die. Arnold could never forget the frustration of being unable to deny that truth. From that day on, he stood on the front lines without rest, pushing both his magic and his body beyond their limits. He created magical tools capable of overturning the tide of battle. Though he could have refused a court position and lived comfortably as a magic tool craftsman, he now felt this life was not so bad, as there was a kind of happiness that could only be found here. A strong bond had formed because the soldiers of the 35th Frontier Battalion believed in him and chose to follow him. The girl from earlier quickly pulled out her compass and reported that multiple signals had appeared within the alert zone. She identified them as ogre reactions. She asked whether it was an attack, but Arnold denied it, explaining that their movement pattern was unusual. At their current distance, he estimated they would arrive in about 30 minutes. To prevent further casualties, he decided to intercept the threat and ordered all squads to deploy. The soldiers responded in unison and immediately set out. At the ogre's location, a knight stared in disbelief as his sword failed to cut through even a single one. He wondered what was happening in this forest, as his weapon was completely useless. Just as an ogre prepared to strike, a voice echoed from behind, remarking that if such a creature entered Box with equipment like that, it would be torn apart instantly. In the next instant, the ogre was sliced to pieces. The knight stood frozen as Arnold stepped forward, commenting that the fang of a Tempest ogre truly was remarkable. He examined his blade and noted that even a light polish made it perfectly usable, wondering aloud whether adding rare magic stones might enhance it further. Soon after, a girl called out to Arnold, reporting that the situation on her side had been resolved. All the ogres had been defeated. She added that they appeared to be remnants led by the Tempest ogre they had slain earlier, and that they were all relatively weak individuals. Arnold commended Envy and Maribel for their work, then asked where Lele had gone. The two glanced in her direction, and Envy commented that it looked like she had drunk far too much. Arnold then turned to Shu, the man from before, and asked if he could entrust the rest to him. Shu agreed and lifted Celia, who loudly complained that she hated bright places. Shu replied that there were simply too many bodies lying around and asked for her cooperation, reminding her that she specialized in dealing with corpses. Celia protested, insisting she was a necromancer, not someone meant to clean up dead bodies. As quiet chatter spread through the group, Arnold gave a small laugh, saying he understood. Shortly after, Lele called out to him, announcing that lunch was ready. Watching this scene unfold, the knight couldn't help but question how they could remain so relaxed. He reflected on how the forest was crawling with ferocious monsters that his sword couldn't even damage. And yet, this was the strength of Lord Arnold, one of the 7 masters. Still, he realized it wasn't Arnold alone. It was the combined strength of the entire unit. The knight stepped forward and apologized for interrupting. He explained that he had come as a messenger, bearing orders from someone who wished to see Sir Arnold. Arnold found this unexpected. The knight then revealed that it was an urgent summons and requested that Arnold return to the castle at once. As a gesture of thanks, he offered his horse, explaining that if Arnold rode without delay, he could reach the capital within a day. Envy asked about the urgency, and as Arnold read the letter, she urged him to accept the request. Arnold reassured her, saying there was no need to worry, since with horses and enhancement magic, they could reach the royal castle of the Descent Kingdom before sunset. Not long after, Arnold arrived at the capital, where a man declared that Arnold was to be exiled from the realm. From that moment, his title as one of the 7 court mages was stripped away, and his noble status revoked. There would be no appeals. The one who pronounced the judgment was Prince Gale Rio. Arnold calmly asked if he might be told the reason behind the decision. An elderly man standing beside the prince stepped forward, introducing himself as Middle. He explained that the main charge was negligence of duty, claiming that compared to the other court mages, Arnold had produced no results. Arnold replied by questioning whether his accomplishments should truly be measured against the others, whose main role had been invading foreign nations. His own responsibility had always been defense, and naturally, the results would look different. Middle countered by stating that reports claimed Arnold had spent too much time crafting magic tools instead of subjugating enemies. Prince Gale Rio dismissed such work outright, calling it the task of a third-rate mage and insisting that someone bearing the title of one of the 7 should not concern himself with it. To them, Arnold was nothing more than a recluse obsessed with making magic tools. Yet Arnold had been appointed by the king himself, recognized for his unparalleled skill in magic tool creation. Now, he couldn't shake the feeling that this exile was merely a pretext arranged by the second prince. In this political conflict, neutrality had become a weakness. His dedication to defending Varks instead of aligning with a faction had come back to haunt him. Gale Rio claimed he had heard rumors of weapons and magic tools made from rare materials being distributed to second-class soldiers. He argued that such valuable resources were being wasted, stating that expendable soldiers should be treated as expendable. Hearing this, anger flared within Arnold. He replied that, with all due respect, his subordinates were not disposable objects. Though their ranks differed, they were comrades who trusted one another and fought side by side. Gale Rio questioned whether Arnold was daring to speak back. He declared that in the king's absence, he himself governed the kingdom, and his words carried the authority of the Descent throne. He warned that continued opposition would be seen as rebellion. Gale Rio then drew his sword, making it clear that such defiance would result in immediate execution. He added that any battalion members who sided with Arnold would be treated as traitors and executed alongside him. Arnold's fury deepened. Gale Rio coldly stated that he would show mercy for now and limit the punishment to exile alone. Arnold replied that he had no objections to banishment or to losing his title. Hearing this, Gale Rio laughed, saying that was exactly what he wanted to hear. He added that Arnold's successor among the Seven Masters was far more capable, and that the subordinates Arnold left behind would finally be used properly. As tools, as second-class citizens were meant to be. At that instant, Arnold's anger exploded. He unleashed lightning magic, forcing Gale Rio and Middle to recoil in fear. They shouted, demanding to know what he was doing. Arnold answered that anyone who insulted or belittled his comrades would receive no mercy, regardless of who they were. With that, he shattered Galirio's sword. Panicked, Gale Rio hurriedly declared that he would overlook Arnold's insolence this time. He ordered him to leave the country immediately before he changed his mind, mockingly adding that Arnold could even take all the junk he had hoarded in the barracks. As Arnold turned away, he realized that if he hadn't held back, Galirio's head would have been sent flying. Given the circumstances, it seemed unlikely the battalion would face further punishment. Still, the weight of exile bore heavily on him. He had never imagined leaving behind comrades who believed in him. With their strength and the magic tools he had created, he knew he could survive whatever battles awaited him. Yet this was the loneliest he had felt since his days in the orphanage. Later, standing alone in his room, Arnold felt an unfamiliar heaviness as he began to clear it out. He realized he had never once properly cleaned the room. Choosing not to waste time sorting anything, he placed everything into his magic storage pouch. By layering spatial magic with weight reduction and decay prevention enchantments, he neatly stored all his belongings away. This pouch, infused with multiple complex enchantments, was one of his proudest works. With it, there was virtually nothing he could not carry. As he stepped out of the room, he overheard two knights talking nearby. One mentioned that a new member of the Seven Masters would soon assume the position. The other added that the appointment had strong backing from the Second Prince's faction. They continued, noting that although the king remained active and healthy, age had begun to catch up with him, and Prince Gale Rio appeared increasingly eager to claim the throne. Rumors were already circulating that he was gathering supporters from the other royal factions. Hearing this, Arnold wondered whether Princess Plulla would be safe. She had always treated them with kindness and never spoke with arrogance. He considered at least saying farewell, but quickly realized it would be inappropriate for someone stripped of rank and title to appear before her. Back at the battalion, news of Arnold's exile spread quickly, igniting anger among the soldiers. Envy declared that Boggs had survived only because of Arnold. Shu spoke up, stating that the captain's magic tools were creations no one else could reproduce. Maribel added that they were alive solely because of him. When Shu mentioned that even Elral had been trembling all afternoon, Envy suddenly announced she would chase after Arnold and slam her resignation onto the army's desk. Maribel immediately stopped her, saying that although everyone felt the same, they could not allow Envy to act alone. Envy then suggested that they should all follow Lord Arnold together. Shu objected, arguing they could not abandon their post so abruptly, as it would appear the captain was inciting a mutiny. He added that only a small number should go for now. Lele agreed, saying it was simple enough. She pulled out a competition chart to decide who would go first and warned everyone not to complain afterward. Envy told them not to blame her if they ended up regretting it. Lele suggested settling things properly and determining who was strongest once and for all. Shu reminded them to keep the damage to a minimum. As the contest began, Envy wondered who would be the last standing and asked whether Maribel was not joining. Maribel replied that there was no chance she could defeat the squad leader. As the match dragged on, Shu wondered what exactly he should report afterward. That night, Arnold slept beside his horse when an elderly man approached and greeted him respectfully, saying dawn was near and preparations were complete. Arnold woke, handed the man a pouch of coins, and apologized for the trouble. He reflected that in a single day, he had lost everything. He wondered what he should live for now, and whether gathering allies to oppose the kingdom was truly the right path. At that moment, Envy and Maribel appeared behind him. They declared it was a brilliant idea, saying their blood was boiling and their resolve burned hot. Arnold asked what they were doing in a place like this and told them not to say they had run all the way from Vox. He also asked why they looked so exhausted. Envy told Maribel to keep the tournament secret, then revealed she had already submitted her resignation from the army. Maribel had done the same. Envy continued, saying that even if it meant becoming enemies of the Descent Kingdom, she would follow him. She added that every member of the 35th Frontier Battalion shared that resolve. Arnold asked whether the entire battalion truly intended to leave. He reminded them he was no longer one of the 7 masters nor a battalion commander, and that he could no longer protect anyone, even if they stayed with him. Maribel replied that back in Vox, where they fought hopeless battles day after day, more than weapons or magic tools had been forged. Envy added that Arnold had given them something far more important: the strength to believe in someone again and the will to keep fighting. He had given them a reason to live. She said she had no homeland left to return to. Her country had been conquered, turning her into a second-class citizen. The place she belonged was wherever Lord Arnold stood. That was her home. Arnold admitted he once believed his hands existed only to create magic tools, but if they truly had nowhere to go, then they would simply create a place of their own. He realized, perhaps too late, that he had found his own purpose as well: to build a place where everyone could live. He declared he would build their nation with his own hands and asked whether Maribel and Envy would believe in him. They both answered without hesitation. Envy then asked how he planned to found a country in the first place. Arnold told them to move out, saying he already had a solid plan. In the kingdom of Limbol, Descent's northern neighbor, within the city of Gardner, an old man spoke in frustration. He reported that yet another caravan had been attacked by bandits and wondered how many times it had already happened. He explained that the bandits knew the Limbol royal family lacked the power to launch a proper subjugation force, which was why they acted without fear. Even after raising the bounty, the damage continued to grow. He added that if this persisted, the guild's reputation would suffer, and if travel between Limbol and Descent were cut off, relations between the two nations would inevitably worsen. At that moment, Arnold, Envy, and Maribel arrived in the kingdom. Not long after, bandits launched an ambush, only to be swiftly crushed by the 3 of them. Soon afterward, a man rushed to the guildmaster and reported the disturbance. The guildmaster asked what had occurred, and the man replied that a requesting party had appeared and already captured an entire band of wanted criminals. Stunned, the guildmaster asked whether it was truly every criminal on the list and what kind of group they were. Arnold stepped forward and introduced himself. He stated that they were an adventure clan called Frontier Coral and requested an audience with the guildmaster. Within the Descent Kingdom, in the royal territory of Box, a fierce battle was unfolding at a rare logistics base. Lei commented that things had become chaotic once again today. Shu replied that the monster extermination operation, led by Vinland of the 7 Sages Direct Unit, who had arrived as Lord Arnold's successor, had already entered its 3rd day. Lei complained about being stuck guarding supplies in such a place, calling it unbearably dull. Shu answered that the unit likely intended to keep all the achievements of the operation for themselves. Ilruv then wondered aloud where Lord Arnold might be at that moment. Shu explained that according to a letter Envy had sent after meeting Lord Arnold, they had already crossed the northern border and should be reaching the first town by now. Cilia joined them and asked if they were talking about the kingdom of Limbol, adding that the situation there was somewhat concerning. When Shu asked for the reason, Cilia explained that the massive Teutoburg forest stretching across Box also extended deep into Limbol. She continued by saying that Lord Arnold had only been dealing with monsters spilling out of the forest for defensive purposes, which had barely maintained balance among the creatures. However, she feared that a large-scale sweep operation would disrupt that balance entirely, potentially affecting Limbol as well. Lei wondered if Lord Arnold and the others were safe, hoping they had not lowered their guard. At that moment, a large number of wounded soldiers from Vinland's squad appeared, urgently calling for medical assistance. Lei jumped in shock, noting that there seemed to be no end to the injured today. Shu admitted that he had an ominous feeling about the situation. Meanwhile, in the city of Gardner within the Kingdom of Limbol, the guild master reported that Beck's Red Cat bandits who had targeted trade caravans, the extermination unit from Gilbert's Mountain Fortress, and even Connor's Crimson Squad had all been defeated. He stated that it was hard to believe the guild's most wanted group of thieves had been eliminated in a single blow. Arnold then asked whether they could receive job introductions through the Adventurers Guild. The guild master agreed, saying the bounty for the bandit group should be ready by the next day. Arnold replied that, as expected, The guild master always spoke directly and made things simple. The guild master responded that Arnold taking on such work would be reassuring for the guild, and with the non-aggression pact with dissent, it might even prevent war in Limbo. He added that royal families always sought powerful individuals, and depending on Arnold's achievements, direct commissions could soon follow. Arnold concluded that this meant it was an ideal opportunity to promote their work. The guild master agreed and told Arnold he was free to select any request from the board, as a wide range of ranks and job types were available. Naturally, the responsibility for the results would fall on him. Envy and Maribel became excited upon seeing requests mentioning a pair of salamanders and sightings of a greater demon. The guild master explained that both requests were classified around the mithril rank. Arnold reflected that Envy and Maribel truly were from warrior races. Envy then asked what mithril represented. Arnold explained that it was part of the ranking system used to measure adventurers and quest difficulty. In Limbo, the ranks progressed from iron, copper, silver, gold, mithril, and then orichalcum, while in Descent they were labeled from E to S. He emphasized that choosing their first assignment was crucial for their future. With limited manpower, he wanted to prioritize tasks that could be completed quickly and lead to long-term opportunities. As an example, he pointed out a permanent request titled Ogre Subjugation, ranked Silver. Envy and Maribel reacted unhappily, saying they had already defeated more ogres than they could remember and found no enjoyment in it. Arnold replied that repeated battles naturally made it feel dull. However, for low-ranked adventurers and ordinary travelers, ogres remained extremely dangerous. Despite their low intelligence, they moved in groups, and even with crude weapons, their raw strength was not something to dismiss. He explained that dealing with them required sufficient healing potions and proper equipment. Because of this, ogres were considered troublesome targets, and with such poor rewards, few adventurers accepted those quests. As a result, ogre numbers continued to grow, leaving many requests unresolved. Maribel then asked if that meant there was no benefit for them. Arnold replied that this was precisely why the ogre subjugation request was worthwhile. The guild had long struggled with these quests being difficult yet unprofitable, but for seasoned fighters like them, the task would be simple. He added that even a single member of their group could handle it. He further explained that ogre populations recovered quickly, ensuring the requests would never run out. In other words, it was steady work they could continue even after their squad reunited. More importantly, it was a task that benefited everyone involved. Endy added that it was not only the guild that suffered. Travelers, caravans, and local residents were all affected, and perhaps even the entire kingdom of Limbo was at risk. She believed that resolving this issue could prove the value of their clan's existence. Arnold replied that if so, it would serve as a foothold toward creating their own nation. He said it was clearly worth taking on and suggested they learn enough for the day, as he also wanted the two of them to rest properly with a hot shower and a soft bed. Endy's cheeks flushed as she said there was no helping it and that she would go along. She then asked to participate in the very first mission of the Adventurers clan, Frontier Coral. While they walked through the streets, Maribel asked Endy what Frontier Coral actually was. Endy answered that there was no way she would know, then remarked to Arnold that his sense for naming things alone might only qualify as iron rank. She thought that for someone as flawless as Lord Arnold, having small imperfections like that made him feel perfectly human. Otherwise, he would turn into someone far beyond her reach. Endy came from Provincia, a province within Descent. It was a land where the culture of sacred duels was deeply ingrained. In that country, men and women were treated equally from birth, and every child was raised to become a warrior. She recalled her home from long ago, when her mother once lost her temper and hurled utensils at her husband. Her mother demanded that he repeat what he had said, declaring that being her husband did not mean she would hold back. Her father replied that if she was dissatisfied, she should try cooking something better, adding that a true warrior never retracted their words. Her mother then told him to step outside and announced a duel. Moments later, her father ended up bedridden and wrapped in bandages. Among married couples in Provincia, such serious injuries were hardly unusual. Even though people from Descent were often labeled barbarians, Endy understood the meaning behind those customs. If one could not fight, then they could not even stake their life to protect what truly mattered. She remembered believing that a warrior's honor lay in dying on the battlefield. With that conviction, She threw herself into the Battle of Vox. That was when Arnold appeared as the battalion commander. He told her that her combat performance had been impressive and asked for her name. Endi introduced herself and said there was no need to worry, explaining that even if she did not look the part, she was a warrior. Arnold replied that he did not want to lose a single member of his unit and that he wished she would not fight so recklessly. Endi responded that she had heard he was one of the 7 masters, yet he spoke with surprising gentleness. She said that one could not survive Vox without being prepared to die, because on that battlefield, warriors offered both pride and life to open a path for their comrades, and she was one of them. Arnold said he understood, then declared that the warrior Endi ended right there. Endi froze in shock as Arnold activated his magic. He said that if even one of his precious subordinates died, it would grieve them deeply, but if they lived, happiness could still be found. He asked her to fight from that moment on as a member of the 35th Frontier Battalion, to fight together, live together, alongside everyone else. When Endi replied that such a thing was impossible, saying she had lived believing the battlefield would be where she died, an ogre suddenly rose behind her. Without noticing, Endi muttered that beautiful words like that protected nothing. Arnold answered that she was right, and that it might sound like hollow idealism. Then, with a single blow of his hand, he struck down the monster, declaring that as long as his hands could reach, he would protect them with everything he had. Those he chose were his precious comrades. Arnold collapsed afterward. Endi screamed his name, and Arnold replied that getting injured really was not a good thing. He added that he looked forward to working with her. As they returned to the fight, Endi thought that from now on she wanted to protect everyone, and Lord Arnold too. She swung her dragon-flying absolute blade and cut down the ogre behind him. Arnold commented that it was just as expected of Endi and said he could have handled that himself. Endi replied that she wanted to be useful to him as well, and that no matter what battles awaited them, she would prove she could earn his trust and protect him. Arnold then checked the compass, while Maribel warned them to stay alert, sensing something approaching. Suddenly, several knights rushed toward them, pleading for assistance. Arnold asked what was going on. One knight explained that there was no doubt about it. This mission was bad news. The number of monsters was overwhelming, and some were far beyond silver rank. An explosion suddenly rang out behind them, and Arnold spotted a red ogre. He said it was a higher species that sometimes appeared in Vox, and questioned why it had traveled all the way to Limbol. As he considered how to keep Gardner from being dragged into devastation, Endi declared that she would take on the red ogre, leaving the rest to Maribel. Maribel protested, saying it was unfair and wishing she were stronger. Endi replied that it was first come, first served, and the two charged forward. As Endi and Maribel fought, a knight asked Arnold if he was the clan leader and whether he had lost his mind, leaving something like that to women alone. Another wounded knight urged them to flee while they still could. Endi thought that maybe not now, but someday she would fight beside Arnold as his equal. She realized then that she felt something for him, because she loved him. Suddenly, an axe flew in from behind. Arnold shouted her name, rushed forward, grabbed her, and pulled her clear. He said that neither of them would be hurt today, and Endi blushed. Maribel announced that she was finished on her side and asked what was going on between the two of them. The moment turned awkward. Endi muttered that it was nothing and that she still had a long road ahead. Maribel asked what she meant and demanded an explanation. Endi replied that it was a secret. Meanwhile, Arnold thought that a higher species appearing in one of Lineblum's relatively peaceful forests was strange. He wondered whether it was mere coincidence, or if it was connected to the Great Teutoburg Forest and the Vox region. He sensed that events might already be sliding into dangerous territory. Within the royal castle of the Kingdom of Descent, inside the private chamber of the Second Prince, Gale Rio sat calmly, savoring his tea. He remarked that matters in the heavenly land of Vox should, by now, be proceeding smoothly in Descent's favor. He continued by saying that removing the Second Princess's faction had been well worth the effort, and that all that remained was to await the outcome of Vinland's campaign, the commander he himself had recommended. Once those achievements were reported to their father, the path to the throne would be secured. At that moment, Middle rushed in, announcing the arrival of a messenger. Gale Rio replied that he had been expecting this and asked whether the monsters of Vox had been completely eradicated. Middle reported instead that Sir Vinland had suffered critical injuries and had been forced to withdraw from the front lines. Gale Rio immediately demanded to know the fate of the direct unit. When Middle answered that the unit had been annihilated, and that reports were pouring in about monster activity surging rapidly in neighboring nations, Gale Rio was struck speechless. Elsewhere in the royal castle of Descent, a knight hurried in to deliver a report to King Faraday. He informed the king that the mop-up operation in Vox had failed after a large-scale assault by a monster army. The 7th Division, under Vinland's command, had been rendered combat ineffective due to severe injuries. The remaining direct subordinates were still holding out, but were on the brink of total destruction, and urgent reinforcements were being requested. Upon hearing this, the king's face darkened. He addressed the prince, stating that an unforgivable mistake had been made during his absence and that he was profoundly disappointed in Gale Rio. Gale Rio countered that if a replacement for the 7 masters was required, he could name several capable individuals. The king cut him short, declaring that the report clearly showed Arnold had managed to contain such a terrifying force with nothing more than a single battalion. Rather than a failure, Arnold was a hero. The king went on to question whether Gale Rio truly understood how catastrophic it would be if that level of power fell into another nation's hands, and what kind of threat it would pose to Descent's future. He then pronounced that a foolish son like Gale Rio had no place in governing the kingdom and ordered him to leave the royal castle at once. Stunned, Prince Gale Rio stood motionless. The king returned to his throne and began weighing their next course of action. He considered how they should respond, noting that deploying reinforcements would take time, and wondered whether the royal capital guard should be mobilized. At that moment, First Prince Baldo stepped forward and stated that the royal capital guard was the kingdom's ultimate trump card. He proposed that they first dispatch the troops stationed throughout the surrounding provinces. The king agreed, adding that an imbalance in military power across their lands could invite rebellion. Baldo replied that in such a case, they should conscript soldiers even from among the second-class citizens of those provinces, stripping them of any means to rebel. The king warned that such measures would inevitably ignite resistance, but Baldo insisted that it was still preferable to allowing monsters to devastate the entire nation. Taking a deep breath, the king ordered the immediate mobilization of forces. He commanded them to stall the monster army and buy time while reinforcements were assembled, and instructed them to begin preparations to rebuild the defensive line at Vox. Meanwhile, at the Adventurers Guild in Gardner City within the Kingdom of Limbol, Arnold was concentrating on adjusting his compass. When asked what he was doing, he explained that he was maintaining his magic tools, as the past few days had been unusually hectic. He mentioned dealing with bandits, confronting a red ogre, and various other incidents, and said he wanted to remain prepared for anything that might occur. He added that he was also working on a prototype for a new magic tool, a bracelet, and asked whether Maribel would be willing to test it by wearing it for a while. She inquired about its effects. Arnold replied that they should both wear the same model first. At that moment, Endy arrived and commented that it was a magic tool she had never seen before. Maribel then asked if Endy was interested as well. Endy responded that Lord Arnold's magic tools had saved her life countless times. Maribel agreed, adding that Arnold's creations were now indispensable to them. When Endy asked whether Maribel had not once claimed to hate magic tools, Maribel admitted she had, but said that things had changed. Maribel then found herself recalling her past. She remembered her people, the horse-riding warriors of the Halkit tribe, who had once lived in their homeland of Ishida. They were fighters who commanded both their steeds and their spirits with ease, and on the open plains of battle, they had once been truly unmatched. Her father had once told her that arrows infused with spirit energy could pierce even the armor worn by Descent soldiers, ripping straight through enemy lines as they advanced. He had instructed her to aim carefully and loose her arrow. Yet in that instant, she was stunned when her spirit arrow was completely negated. The enemy knights responded by deploying magical cannons, annihilating her entire tribe. Even after surviving brutal training and mastering her own life force, she was still unable to so much as scratch the Descent soldiers who depended on magic tools. She could not bring herself to accept that reality. To her, magic tools were repulsive inventions that relied on borrowed, artificial power. After Ishida fell and was absorbed as a province, she was reduced to a second-class conscript. In her pursuit of genuine strength, she requested deployment to the most dangerous battlefield within the Descent Kingdom, Vox. Maribel then recalled her first encounter with Arnold. She had been walking when she saw him surrounded by various magical implements. Arnold had said that with those supplies, they would manage for a while. She asked what he was doing, and he replied that he was preparing healing potions for the battalion members, telling her to use them freely if needed. That was when anger surged within her. She said she hated him, declaring that anyone who relied on magic tools was weak and lacked true resolve. She insisted that she would never depend on such things. Arnold calmly picked up a potion and said that he had poured everything he possessed into creating them. Maribel argued that with powerful magic tools, even an inexperienced fighter could defeat a stronger foe, and that depending on how they were used, such tools could turn people into cowardly and despicable beings. Arnold then explained that magic tools were not created solely to kill or win battles. He said that when facing dangerous monsters, magic tools could protect lives or allow one to avoid danger entirely. He added that if he could create tools that guided and supported his battalion, and if they could all survive together because of that, then it would be his true victory. He stated that he would continue making magic tools for that reason, and that even if she despised him, as long as he could help her someday, that alone would be enough. Suddenly, someone rushed in with urgent news. Envy had shielded a comrade from a monster's attack, but the wound was too severe, and healing magic would not be fast enough. Arnold immediately activated his magic, Phoenix Tail Feather. Maribel watched in disbelief as the fatal wound healed at an astonishing speed. She wondered what it was, and Arnold explained that it was a magic tool crafted from the feather of an immortal bird that governed eternity, capable of instantly healing even mortal wounds, but only once. Maribel asked if he was truly certain, given how precious the item was. Arnold affirmed his decision and said that magic tools existed to help others. Envy rose to her feet, and Layla rushed over in relief, hugging her tightly. Maribel then asked Arnold if it was all right for her to keep the potion. As she held it, she thought that Lord Arnold, who guided his companions with pride, conviction, strength, and countless magic tools, was truly precious. Maribel came to deeply respect him, and because of that, Lord Arnold's magic tools also became precious to her. At that moment, the guildmaster arrived and apologized for keeping them waiting. He said that the reward for the bandit hunt from the other day was ready and asked them to come over. Arnold told Envy and Maribel to wait, and the guildmaster added that he had heard Arnold had defeated a red ogre the day before. He remarked that it was an impressive achievement for their very first job. With that, the two of them departed. Soon after, several adventurers approached Envy and Maribel. They asked whether it was true that the monster had been a red ogre. One scoffed, saying there was no way a pretty boy and two girls could have accomplished that. When Envy asked what he meant, the adventurer kicked the compass, claiming Arnold must have relied on some cheap magic tool or underhanded trick. Maribel immediately picked up the compass and demanded an apology, saying she would not forgive anyone who insulted Lord Arnold's magic tools. The adventurer mocked her and asked if she was just a child. Envy bristled with anger, saying that the man had dared to insult her comrade. Maribel stopped her and said that they did not even understand the true value of that magic tool. She asked whether they intended to remain low-rank adventurers forever. The adventurers grew furious and told them to step outside, promising they would regret it. Once outside, Envy angrily asked why Maribel had stopped her. Maribel replied that if Envy fought while enraged, she would kill them, and since there were only 3, Envy could easily hold back. The adventurers sneered, saying they would make her regret underestimating them, and that even if she begged, they would not forgive her. Maribel replied that the one who should apologize was the knight. She then took out a potion. One of the adventurers noticed it and said he recognized it. The red ogre must have used the same thing. Maribel tossed the potion into the air and said she would not even need it against people like them, and that before it returned to her hand, it would already be over. The adventurers rushed forward, but Maribel dodged effortlessly and countered, taking one of them down. The second charged in, but she struck him down as well, breaking through his armor. The third tried to curse her, but she slammed him aside with her elbow and calmly caught the falling healing potion. Envy smiled, saying that leaving it to Maribel had been the right choice. Meanwhile, Arnold received the payment for the bandit hunt and noted that the reward was higher than expected. He said that with this amount, they would be set for lodging for a while and could begin searching for a base. When he returned to Envy and Maribel, he noticed a crowd gathering around them. He saw Maribel demanding an apology from an adventurer for insulting her comrades and for insulting Lord Arnold's magic tools. Just as one of the adventurers was about to draw his sword, Envy shouted for Maribel to watch behind her. A blade was approaching from her 7 o'clock position. Maribel dodged the strike and slammed the attacker to the ground. Envy rushed over and asked if she was all right. Maribel replied that the voice she had just heard had definitely come from the magic bracelet. Arnold arrived and said that he was relieved. He explained that everything was functioning properly, even though it was still only a prototype. He added that the device allowed voices to be transmitted over long distances through paired magic tools. He said it was one of the tools he was currently developing and that its name was here to talk. Number 1. Maribel laughed, saying that Lord Arnold truly was amazing. One of the adventurers struggled to stand and asked whether they really thought they could get away with this. Arnold replied that he wished to repay them for assisting his comrades and asked if they had any requests. The adventurer smiled and said Arnold seemed far more obedient than expected. He then demanded that Arnold hand over his strongest healing potion. Arnold agreed without hesitation. He produced a potion and explained that it was a special brew made from hydra bile and a ghoul's heart. He said that if consumed, even a severe wound would heal completely within 3 days. The adventurer wore a satisfied grin, but Arnold calmly added that the stench was so overwhelming that anyone who drank it would remain unconscious for the full 3 days. Endy glanced at Maribel and remarked that she had changed as well, since she had been carrying that potion with her. Maribel flushed and told her to stop teasing. She explained that the magic tools created by Lord Arnold were unlike any others, and although she could not properly describe it, she felt there was something special about them. Endy laughed and suggested she should simply admit that she liked him, but Maribel replied that she did not really understand what that meant. At that moment, knights arrived and demanded an explanation for the disturbance. The adventurers muttered that the Limbal knights had shown up, and one of them remarked that it was time to flee. A knight responded that such reactions suited petty criminals and effortlessly struck him down. The surrounding crowd whispered in surprise, wondering if those were the holy knights. The knights then questioned whether the 2 women were responsible for the chaos and warned them not to think they could escape by stirring confusion. A female knight stepped forward, declaring that anyone who disrupted the order of the Kingdom of Limbal would not evade her sight. She introduced herself as Sakura von Ars Nova Signarii and announced that those who resisted would be judged by her blade on the spot. Arnold immediately sensed that this situation was critical and that he could not afford to be delayed. 3 days earlier, at Gardiner Street Stall Square, a young girl had asked Sakura to look at a ribbon, calling it cute. Sakura replied that it would suit Oka well and asked if she should buy it as a gift. The girl had asked if that was truly fine, and Sakura responded by questioning whether she was forbidden from shopping freely in her position. She then told the girl to wait, saying she would return shortly. When Sakura came back, she apologized for the delay, only to find that Oka was gone. Since that day, Sakura had searched relentlessly for Oka, who had vanished without leaving a single trace. Not even one clue had surfaced. Just then, the guild master stepped outside and noticed Lady Sakura, commenting that it had been some time and mentioning that he had heard of her recent nighttime exploits. He asked what had brought her here, and Sakura replied that she had been apprehending those causing a disturbance and would soon capture the remaining 3. The guild master laughed, and when Sakura questioned what amused him, he explained that those men were no ordinary ruffian adventurers. He then asked whether she was aware that the bandit group along the border road had been completely eliminated. Sakura replied that it must have been the achievement mentioned in the latest adventure report. The guild master confirmed that it was indeed the same party, the Frontier Choral of the Adventurers Guild, and Sakura's expression stiffened in shock. He continued, explaining that the guild had just certified the subjugation of a dangerous red ogre. Because of that success, resentment toward the newly established adventuring group was inevitable. He added that he would cooperate fully to clear any misunderstandings. Realizing her mistake, Sakura knelt and apologized for her unfounded suspicion. Arnold declined the apology, admitting that they themselves had acted excessively. Sakura replied that regardless of circumstance, fighting was never justified and asked them to be more cautious moving forward. Envy and Maribel also apologized. Arnold then stated that he had one question. When Sakura prompted him, He asked why a holy knight was stationed in Gardner rather than the capital, and whether something severe had occurred to disturb someone known for her calm and composed demeanor. He added that the instability in the magical energy she was emitting alone revealed how grave the matter truly was. Sakura admitted that he had seen through her easily. Arnold apologized for overstepping and suggested that perhaps they could assist. Sakura reflected that every possible lead had already been exhausted, and if so, then accepting their help was the only remaining option. She added that even though it had been a misunderstanding, she had still doubted them and wanted to know how they felt about lending their aid. Arnold replied that no explanation was needed, as leaving matters unresolved was unacceptable. He said he felt the same himself. Sakura nodded, stating that this issue was no longer hers alone. In the worst case, it could threaten their positions or even their lives, and she asked whether they were prepared for such consequences. Maribel answered that this was exactly what she wanted. Endi added that the battlefield was no different, especially when failure was not an option. Arnold declared that as long as his hands could still reach, he would give everything he had. Sakura responded that those words meant more to her than anything at that moment. She asked them to call her Sakura and requested to hear their names as well. After everyone introduced themselves, Sakura explained that the one who had vanished was her half-sister, Oka Ars Nova, the heir to one of the most prestigious families in the Kingdom of Limbol. She added that Oka should have been by her side, yet she had disappeared without a trace. Despite organizing search parties and scouring the city, they had failed to uncover even the faintest clue. Arnold recognized this as a missing person case and stated that, given the circumstances, it was reasonable to assume abduction. Even if the Holy Knights had overlooked the act, it was unlikely to have been a simple crime. Endi added that it could not have been the work of ordinary bandits. Maribel followed by saying that leaving no trace indicated careful planning, and that a professional had undoubtedly targeted Lady Oka. Sakura was stunned by the conclusion, and as she struggled to process it, Arnold stated with certainty that Oka was still alive. He explained that although the motive was unclear, no one would abduct someone without reason. Sakura replied that if that were true, then with Gardner already thoroughly searched, the investigation would have to extend beyond the city itself. She then asked how many days it would take if they relied only on the search team. Arnold replied that rather than searching aimlessly, it would be better to pursue the culprits directly. He then asked Sakura whether she had anything that had belonged to Lady Oka. Sakura answered that she did, though she hesitated to call it a possession, explaining that it was a ribbon Oka had touched shortly before her disappearance. Arnold said there was a lingering trace of magic on it and that he wanted to test something. When Sakura asked what he planned to do with the ribbon, Arnold produced a small, puppy-shaped magic tool, a tracking device known as Snifferkuin. Sakura was startled by the sight, and Envy asked when he had acquired such a magic tool. Arnold explained that Errol had once requested a device to track squad members who skipped meals, but as operations became too hectic, the idea had been abandoned. Sakura replied that she had encountered many rare magic tools, yet had never seen anything like this, and asked whether Arnold was skilled not only in battle but also in crafting magic tools. Arnold answered that he was not especially talented at either magic or swordplay. Envy remarked that this gap in self-perception was remarkable, while Maribel added that it was precisely what made him so formidable. Arnold then held the ribbon close to Snifferkuin and said that it had been a while since their last outing, and that it was time to register the owner of this magic. Snifferkuin sniffed the ribbon and began moving about. Arnold instructed it to track the owner of the magic signature. Suddenly, Snifferkuin headed straight toward Sakura, prompting her to ask what was wrong with it. Arnold explained that the ribbon also carried Sakura's magic, and that Lady Oka's presence might not be detectable there. He said they would need to trace the point where Oka's residual magic still remained, and asked where she had last been seen. Sakura replied that it had been at the nearby square and said she would guide them there. Upon reaching the square, Sakura asked whether it was truly possible to pinpoint Oka's magic amid so many people. Arnold answered that magic was like a fingerprint, unique to each individual, and that as long as the residue had not faded completely, it could be traced. For now, they simply had to trust the device. Suddenly, Snifferkuin reacted and dashed off in a specific direction. Sakura asked if it had found something, and Arnold immediately started running, saying it seemed the pursuit had begun. He added that there was no time to prepare a carriage and that they would have to continue on foot. Near the forest at the border of the Kingdom of Limbol, Arnold asked whether Sakura was holding up. She replied that she was fine, though inwardly she realized she could barely keep pace even with body enhancement. Nearly 3 hours had passed since they left Gardner, yet none of the three showed any sign of exhaustion. She understood then why the guildmaster trusted them so completely and wondered where they had developed such overwhelming strength. Suddenly, Arnold halted and said he had found it. He pointed toward a cave hidden among rocky cliffs, stating that it appeared to be the kidnappers' hideout. Sakura said that from that distance it looked unclear, and noted that the entrance was concealed by illusion and barrier magic. She added that to an ordinary knight it would look like nothing more than a sheer rock wall, and that 2 fully equipped lookouts were stationed there. This, she said, was far removed from the work of simple bandits. Sakura went on to say that they did not know who their enemies were or how many awaited them, and that advancing with only the 3 of them was far too dangerous. Though frustrated, she insisted they withdraw for now, as confirming Oka's safety was her top priority. If they were defeated here, everything would be lost. She suggested returning to call for reinforcements and preparing to break the barrier, noting that dawn would soon arrive at this rate. Arnold responded that he would resolve it quickly, and told Envy and Maribel to protect Lady Sakura. Sakura was stunned and protested that this was reckless, even for Lord Arnold. Envy told her to stay quiet and simply watch. Snifferkuin trotted toward the guards, and one scoffed, saying it was just a stray mutt and that he had panicked for nothing. Another guard suddenly grew alarmed and demanded to know how it had slipped past the disguise and barrier. Before either could react, Arnold struck them down instantly. More guards rushed over, saying they had thought there was only a gap in the barrier, but now it had vanished. They shouted for their leader, reporting that an intruder had been detected. The leader arrived and declared that he did not know how their defenses had been bypassed, but that the intruder would not leave alive. Arnold, however, dispatched each of them without pause. Sakura watched in stunned silence as he subdued them with ease. In mere moments, the barrier had been breached and the threat eliminated. There was no knight she knew who could move like that. Overwhelmed, Sakura cried out that she wanted to know who these people truly were, and who Arnold really was. Envy replied that he was the one they trusted above all others. She revealed that he had once been the commander of the 35th Frontier Battalion of the Descent Kingdom, and also the court magus known as one of the 7 sages, famed everywhere as Arnold of Sloth. Sakura stood frozen in shock. She realized that one of the 7 sages of the Descent Kingdom, being said to possess the power to destroy entire nations alone, stood directly before her. Until then, she had never imagined that the man traveling with her was such an overwhelming existence. Sakura, a holy knight of the Limbal Knights, had been searching for her stepsister Oka, who vanished in the city of Gardner. Yet the search had reached a dead end. In the midst of that despair, the adventurer party Frontier Coral offered their aid. Through Sir Arnold's magic tools, Sakura was finally able to locate the kidnappers' hideout and breach it. She was stunned when the truth became clear that Arnold was none other than the former court mage of the Descent Kingdom, the infamous Arnold, Sloth of the 7 Masters. At that moment, after Arnold defeated the leader guarding the area, the man rose in fury, declaring that everything had gone disastrously wrong. Arnold questioned whether he was a mercenary, stating that the level of coordination involved was far too sophisticated for an ordinary kidnapping. He demanded to know who had given the order to abduct the young woman. The guard responded that Arnold should not assume victory so easily and immediately activated multiple enhancement spells: physical boost, body reinforcement, defensive augmentation, and speed enhancement. Arnold was momentarily surprised that the man could stack enhancement magic so efficiently. The guard boasted that with triple reinforcement active, even a holy knight posed no threat, and that he would crush them all. Arnold acknowledged that he had underestimated the man's capabilities. In return, the guard sneered that even if Arnold begged for mercy, it was already too late. When Arnold activated his own physical boost, the guard laughed mockingly, claiming such a weak enhancement was meaningless. However, Arnold followed by activating additional layers: spirit enhancement, physical boost, and body reinforcement, causing the guard to freeze in disbelief. When Arnold triggered overdrive, the guard could not comprehend what he was witnessing. He shouted in disbelief, unable to accept that magic and spiritual power could be enhanced at the same time. Arnold calmly explained that it was not complicated, stating that one only needed to maintain a perfect balance between magic and spirit, like aligning the tips of two needles without the slightest deviation. He added that for reasons unknown to him, he had never encountered anyone else capable of achieving it. Now overwhelmed with terror, the guard screamed that Arnold was a monster and launched a desperate attack. Elsewhere, Sakura and the others reacted to the violent tremor, wondering what had caused such a disturbance. Maribel replied that the sound had come from deeper within the hideout. Realizing that Arnold was deliberately drawing the enemy's attention, Sakura urged them to locate Oka while the opportunity remained. Suddenly, Sakura noticed that the tracking magic tool, Snifferkuin, was reacting strongly to a nearby wall. Endi pointed it out, and Sakura suspected the presence of a hidden passage. When she pressed against the wall, it opened silently, and she called out, asking if Oka was there. A voice answered from behind iron bars, telling Sakura not to come closer. At that moment, another guard attempted to ambush Sakura from behind, but she swiftly countered the strike. Endi and Maribel quickly eliminated the remaining enemies and recovered the key. Sakura unlocked the cell and asked Oka if she had been injured. Oka replied that it was only a minor wound and apologized, saying her carelessness had caused everyone trouble. She added that she had known Sakura would come for her, and that belief had kept her calm. Sakura then urged everyone to leave the hideout first to ensure Oka's safety before regrouping with Arnold. As they exited, Oka wondered aloud about the man who had helped them. Outside, Arnold appeared and stated that Lady Oka had been successfully rescued and that their task there was complete. He explained that the remaining captors had been restrained and put to sleep with magic, and that reinforcements would handle the aftermath. Sakura addressed Arnold hesitantly, asking whether she should call him Sir Arnold. She apologized for her earlier lack of decorum, admitting that she had never imagined he was the legendary Arnold von Eckenstein of the Seven Masters. She expressed her heartfelt gratitude for rescuing Oka, and both sisters thanked him sincerely. Arnold wondered aloud if he was truly that well known. Oka explained that he was the mysterious mage who had single-handedly defended the Descent Kingdom from monster invasions and never appeared publicly like the other Seven Masters. That was Arnold, the sloth of the Seven Masters. Arnold replied that he could only accomplish such feats because he fought alongside many comrades. Sakura responded that even so, her own swordsmanship paled in comparison. Oka added that simply by observing his magic tools, she could tell he was among the finest in existence. Arnold then stated that things were different now. When they asked what he meant, he explained that he had been exiled from the Descent Kingdom and was now merely Arnold, an adventurer of the Frontier Choral Guild. He then cast magic on Oka, stating that it was advanced healing and purification. Sakura was astonished, noting that the spell had been cast instantly without incantation, something even elite mages struggle to achieve. Oka was equally shocked, realizing her clothes were spotless and her hair looked freshly washed. She said she had never witnessed such refined purification magic. Swordsmanship, magic tools, and spellcasting. No one in all of Limbo possessed such mastery, and yet the Descent Kingdom had cast Arnold aside. Sakura then recalled a memory from the past, realizing that her father's words had been prophetic. She remembered her father calling her aside, saying he had something important to ask of her, requesting that she guard Oka for a time. That man had been Marquis Ars Nova. Sakura asked whether it had something to do with Oka. The Marquis denied it, explaining that unrest was growing among regional factions, particularly among old noble families dissatisfied with Limbo's monarchy. He stated that they were likely attempting to undermine the royalist faction led by the First Prince, possibly working alongside the First Princess amid the looming succession struggle. Sakura understood immediately, realizing that the Ars Nova family was also a potential target. The Marquis confirmed this and added that suspicious armed groups had been reported across Limbo, likely waiting for the right moment to act. Even more concerning was that Dissent's interference had grown increasingly blatant. He had heard that Dissent was buying loyalty from local factions with promises of wealth and power. When Sakura asked about the non-aggression pact, the Marquis scoffed, calling it nothing more than a fragile scrap of paper that would be discarded the moment it became inconvenient. Sakura felt a growing unease as the Marquis continued, stating that a major upheaval might soon occur in Dissent and that its influence would inevitably spread into Limbo. He admitted uncertainty about the future, but said that, for now, he was placing his trust in Sakura. She understood his meaning. Back in the present, Arnold produced a multi-purpose board-type magic tool, a floating board. Oka asked if it was a vehicle, remarking that it looked like a bed drifting through the air and felt strange to ride. Arnold replied that it was sustained by magic and asked them to bear with him briefly while he explained its use. Sakura reassured Arnold that he did not need to worry about them and told him that he could address her by her given name. Hoka then added that it was only proper for them to formally host everyone as benefactors of the Ars Nova family. Turning to Arnold, Sakura asked whether he would be willing to visit the capital, Glatzenburg. Arnold was taken aback when Sakura continued, saying she wished to formally introduce him to her father, Marquis Ars Nova. Noticing his reaction, Sakura asked if something was amiss, and Hoka commented that Sakura's wording had been unusually bold. Within the Ars Nova Marquis 8, at the Ars Nova mansion located east of the capital, the Marquis warmly welcomed Arnold onto his land. He explained that Sakura had already relayed everything in detail, and said that mere words were insufficient to express his gratitude for rescuing Hoka from such a grave situation. Arnold replied that the praise was far more generous than he deserved. The Marquis dismissed his modesty, stating that there was no one in Limbo who was unfamiliar with Arnold's name. Hearing this left Arnold puzzled, as he believed he had done nothing more than hunt monsters along the Descent border. The Marquis asked whether Arnold truly doubted it, and went on to explain that the Teutoburg Great Forest extended from the Descent frontier deep into eastern Limbo, making the defense against monsters emerging from it a vital duty. He added that the Ars Nova lands functioned as a strategic bulwark, the eastern shield against those threats. However, with the monsters growing more ferocious each year, even the knights and royal forces had been unable to fully stem the incursions. The Marquis then spoke of a mage who, commanding only a single battalion, had continuously driven back those monsters. That mage was Arnold, known as the Sloth of the Seven Mages. He asked who could fail to be astonished by such a feat. Arnold replied that he had recently faced a red ogre, and that the monster threat did indeed seem to be intensifying. At that point, Sakura addressed her father, apologizing for allowing the discussion to wander and suggesting they move on to Arnold's reward. She told Arnold to request anything he desired, assuring him that the Marquis would do everything in his power to grant it. Arnold considered that Marquis Ars Nova was among the most influential figures in Eastern Limbo, making this reward a matter of great importance. He realized that what he sought was not immediate gain, but something that would serve the future. Above all else, the unity of the battalion he had left behind mattered most to him. He then said that if Limbo was struggling with monsters in the east, then this would be the reward he wished for. When the Marquis asked for clarification, Arnold explained that he wanted 3 things. First, he requested that Frontier Coral's adventurer rank be raised to gold, as this was necessary to confront dangerous monsters. Second, he asked that the clan's members be guaranteed the same rights as ordinary citizens, so that his comrades would not face unfair treatment. Third, he sought permission to operate freely throughout the entire eastern region of Limbo. The Marquis asked whether that truly constituted his reward, and remarked that Arnold was indeed a remarkable man. He said that he had no reason to refuse, but Sakura sensed an issue and asked about it. The Marquis explained that the problem lay with the third request. His authority covered only part of the eastern region, and granting access to all of it would require consent from the royal family and various factions. He further noted that, with monster invasions worsening, the east was highly unstable, and many influential figures were reluctant to make decisions that might aggravate the situation. Sakura insisted that there should be no doubt about Lord Arnold's capabilities, but the Marquis replied that there were still obstinate individuals, and persuading them would take time. Arnold then said that he needed a way to convince them all at once, and that what he lacked was an overwhelming argument. When the Marquis asked how he intended to accomplish that, Arnold replied that if he could reunite with the rest of his battalion. Before he could finish, Sakura stepped forward and asked the Marquis if she might accompany him. She explained that, as a holy knight of the kingdom, she possessed some authority even beyond Ars Nova lands, which would help prevent conflicts with other factions. The Marquis then asked for Arnold's thoughts. Arnold answered that it was a reasonable suggestion and added that he wished to avoid any action that might endanger the Ars Nova family's standing. More than anything, he said her sincerity was refreshing. At this, Sakura blushed faintly. The Marquis then declared that he would entrust the border coral to Sakura. Afterward, Arnold and Sakura stepped outside together. Arnold remarked that things had worked out well, and thanks to her, they would be able to begin operations in the eastern region the very next day. Sakura replied that her own authority was limited, and that in the end everything would depend on Lord Arnold. He responded that they would prove through their actions that they could truly aid Limbo. Watching them, the Marquis thought to himself that the once innocent girl had truly grown. He had never imagined she would bring back a former Seven Sage, Arnold the Sloth, and he could not even guess what persuasion she had used to move a man like him. Overcome with emotion, the Marquis shed tears of joy and swore that he would never allow her to marry such a man. That evening, Endy and Maribel changed into different outfits. Endy asked whether the clothes suited her, while Maribel said she was unaccustomed to wearing anything like that. When Arnold saw them, he was clearly surprised and asked what was going on with their attire. Oka explained that she had lent them her own clothes along with Sakura's, and just as she expected, both fit perfectly. Endy remarked to Maribel that they had lived their lives on the battlefield until now, and that if they ever built their own country, perhaps this was what everyday life would resemble. At dinner, the maid explained that while the meal was simple, it had been prepared with care, and asked them to enjoy it without concern for etiquette. Endy and Maribel's eyes sparkled, and Endy exclaimed that the meat was incredibly delicious and that she could eat it all. Arnold told them to restrain themselves, then asked the maid about Marquis Ars Nova. She replied that it would be improper to disturb him, and that he had declined to join them. She then invited them to take their seats, saying she would return shortly. After the meal, Arnold stood on the balcony, thinking that he should contact the rest of the battalion soon. Nearby, Endy and Maribel lay back on the couch, relaxing. Suddenly, a man stepped forward and called out Arnold's name, saying he had been looking for him. Arnold turned to face him, and the man expressed that it was an honor to finally meet him. Arnold felt no recognition at all and wondered why a noble from Descent would speak to him with such familiarity. He offered an apology and asked the man to identify himself. The man replied that he was not worthy of a formal introduction, as he was only a courier. He explained that he had been sent personally by His Majesty, King Ferid III of the Descent Kingdom. The messenger continued, stating that the king was deeply grieved by Arnold's banishment, and that the second prince responsible for the incident had already been expelled from the royal castle. His Majesty now wished to restore Arnold to his former position as one of the Seven Masters, granting him exceptional. Along with that would come increased rewards, the highest honors recognizing his achievements, and command over a newly established direct unit composed solely of Descent soldiers rather than provincial forces. Arnold then asked about the fate of the 35th Frontier Battalion. The messenger replied that the unit had abandoned their posts and vanished, leaving behind a massive pile of resignation documents, though he assured Arnold that the defensive measures Arnold had built would continue to be maintained. Arnold declined the offer. He stated that it was fortunate Descent could still suppress monster invasions, unlike Limbo, and that they likely had no shortage of capable individuals. He added that he intended to live according to his own will, and that he had already found a purpose here. As Arnold turned his back, the man warned him that he would regret this choice one day. Arnold dismissed the warning, believing instead that they had chosen to build their own nation with their own hands. Moments later, a knight asked the messenger whether he intended to force Arnold's return. The man replied that since he was alone, getting a little rough would not be an issue. Near the edge of the Tudoberg forest, Arnold, Sakura, and the others were walking when Envy suddenly asked them to stop. Arnold replied that if they delayed, sunset would arrive soon. Envy then asked why Arnold had been accepting so many guild requests lately. Arnold explained that someone had delivered important information to him. The remaining members of the 35th Frontier Battalion had all disappeared from Descent. Envy immediately understood that this meant everyone was likely moving toward Limbo. Sakura added that the closest major city was Gardner, yet no reports mentioned a large unit arriving there. Arnold replied that soldiers from another country marching openly would cause immediate unrest. Envy asked if there were any concealed routes. Arnold answered that the Great Forest itself served as their path. Traveling through it would allow movement without attracting attention, a tactic only feasible for those experienced in forest warfare. He added that, in preparation for reuniting with them, he was taking monster subjugation requests to earn funds. Ensuring the safety of the battalion's approach route was also essential, so he was treating this with full seriousness. Maribel remarked that Envy seemed unusually cheerful, and Envy replied that she simply could not keep still. Sakura noted that she had never seen Lord Arnold like this before and realized how important his comrades truly were to him. Suddenly, Sakura sensed something behind her. Maribel asked if she was already leaving, but Sakura continued following Arnold. After a while, they encountered several augurs and defeated them. Sakura commented that they were remarkably skilled in forest combat. Envy replied that this was everyday life for her, while Maribel added that augurs barely counted as a warm-up. Arnold then pulled out his compass, frowning at its unusual reaction. Sakura asked what was wrong, and at that moment, a presence appeared behind her. She shouted that it was a greater demon, noting that reports had mentioned sightings, but never in a place like this. The demon remained completely motionless, leaving Sakura wondering why it was not attacking and what had occurred. Without warning, assassins emerged from the shadows. Envy shouted to Sakura as one of them lunged at her, intercepting the strike in time. Maribel questioned who these attackers were and tried to evade, but was struck. Envy demanded to know what was happening as her body suddenly stopped responding. Maribel explained that it was a fast-acting paralytic toxin. As Arnold moved to intervene, a voice echoed from behind, ordering him not to move. The voice declared that even a former Seven Master could be easily captured if caught off guard. He was told to comply quietly, or his companions would suffer the consequences.